Good morning to all of you. We'll begin our commission meeting here the 24th day of April 2018. Present today, we have Commissioner Kerry Gibson on the phone. Kerry, you there?
I am here.
Perfect. Commissioner James Ebert on the phone.
I'm here.
Okay, great. And I'm Commissioner Harvey present. This morning, this is our first electronic meeting. Policy number 22, it was adopted back in 2002. All votes today will be given because it's an electronic meeting. There'll all be a roll call vote today, so just a little bit different, but we're excited. We also want to welcome business leaders and other leaders from around the area. Special welcome to you, Commissioner Jim Smith from Davis County. Nina Morris from Davis County here, and Brad Mortensen from Weber State University. Thank you so much for being here as well. Our invocation this morning will be given by Brad Mortensen, and our Pledge of Allegiance will be Holland Wilbanks, and then I'll follow up with the thought of the day. Mr. Mortensen, please.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet today in this blessed circumstance in this free country and for all that thou hast given to us. We ask that thy wisdom and guidance will be with our county commissioners and all the other public servants who are serving to make our community better. And we pray for their benefit. We pray for those who are protecting our freedoms and are in harm's way, and that thou will watch over and help them. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand with me as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think he was preparing yesterday for the thought of the day. It more overwhelmingly came to me about a guy that I kind of made fun of actually when I was young because I was immature. I didn't understand. But I've really grown to admire and appreciate. This guy's name is Fred McNeely Rogers. Fred Rogers, who was born in 1928 on March 20th. He was a television personality, a musician, puppeteer, a writer, producer, a Presbyterian minister, and a decorated veteran. Rogers was known for creating, hosting, and composing the theme music for the educational preschool television series Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which aired from 1968 to 2001, and featured his kind-hearted, neighborly personality and nurturing connection with his audiences. Originally trained as an ordained as a minister, Rogers was displeased the way television addressed children at the time and made an effort to change this when he began to write for and perform on a local Pittsburgh area show dedicated to youth. Rogers developed his own show on WQED in 1968, and it was distributed nationwide by Eastern Educational Television Network. Over the course of 3 decades on television, Rogers became an icon of children's entertainment and education. He was also known for his advocacy on various public causes. Rogers received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, 40 honorary degrees, and the Peabody Award. He was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame, was recognized in 2 congressional resolutions. He was ranked number 35 of TV Guide's 50 Greatest TV Stars of All Time. He has several buildings and artworks in Pennsylvania dedicated to his memory, and the Smithsonian Institution displays one of his trademark sweaters as a treasure of American history. But here's maybe the rest of the story that some of you don't know. In 1969, Fred Rogers appeared before the United States Senate Subcommittee on Communications. His goal was to support funding for PBS and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting in response to proposed budget cuts. In about 6 minutes of testimony, Rogers spoke of the need for social and emotional education that public television provided. He argued that alternative television programming, like His Neighborhood, helped encourage children to become happy and productive citizens, sometimes opposing less positive message in the media and a more popular culture. He recited lyrics to one of his songs. The chairman of the subcommittee, John O. Pastor, who was not familiar with Rogers' work, said, and he was also kind of a cynic, was visibly shaken and was impressed with what Rogers said and said, "Looks like you just earned your $20 million, Mr. Rogers." The subsequent congressional appropriation for 1971 increased PBS funding from $9 million to over $22 million. So my quote today is from Fred Rogers. "Often when you think you're at the end of something, you're at the beginning of something else." Today we're exceptionally excited for some of the things on our agenda. As we at Weber County, hopefully we are at the end of something, but we are certainly at the beginning of something else that we're really, really excited for. Today, commissioners, you can hear, would take the liberty of moving item E to just before item H, so Scott Park can make those presentations all together. Consequently, we'll move to item F on the agenda, which are our consent items. The first consent item, number 1, is a request for approval of warrants 1408 to 1421 and 427,525 to 427,677 in the amount of $2,113,792.08. Item 2 is a request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $467,052.55. Item 3 is a request for approval of the minutes for the meeting held on April 17, 2018. And item 4 is a request for approval of an extension of an agreement by and between Weber County and Triple H Construction for the removal of the sediment from the Weber River. Item 5 is a request for approval of ramp contracts for previous approved ramp grants. Item 6 is a request for approval of a ratification of change order number 09 on an interlocal cooperation agreement by and between Weber County and the state of Utah for the Depot Drive construction project. And item number 7 is changed just briefly to include 1, or a request for approval of a retirement agreement by and between Weber County and Mr. Kevin Burns. Are there any questions, commissioners, on those items?
None for me. None for me.
Great, none being heard. We have Scott Park representing our clerk auditor today, Ricky Hatch. Certainly a much needed improvement. I hope Ricky heard that. Scott, go ahead.
All right. There were 18 purchase orders for $467,000, the largest of which, 51% or $240,000, was for the roads department for chip and tack oil. We had $68,000 or 15% for in-car video cameras for the sheriff's office, $60,000 or 13% for cubicles for the assessor's office, $50,000 or 11% for RV hookups at the Golden Spike, and $26,000 or 6% for the health department for vaccinations. On the checks, we issued 167 checks for $2.1 million. 37% or $789,000 went to the main library construction. $353,000 or 17% went towards disposal costs at the transfer station. $191,000 or 9% went to the paramedic for our monthly services. $177,000 or 8% went to human services, and $108,000 or 5% went to our public defenders.
Very good. Are there any other questions after that explanation, commissioners? None being heard, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gibson and a second by Commissioner Ebert. We'll now call for the roll call vote. All in favor? Fatima, go ahead.
Commissioner Ebert?
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson?
Aye.
And Chair Harvey?
Aye. The motion or the consent items pass unanimously. Thank you. Now on to item number G, which is going to be a discussion and or action. So we'll just use a motion. It's not a resolution of the County Commissioners of Weber County. And to present them, We have our Economic Development Public Outreach Director, Holland Wilbanks. Holland, will you come and do that, please?
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Commissioners, on the phone as well. This is a really exciting day, and we've done a lot of work in preparation to lead up to this day and this presentation. So I'm excited to have Ms. Teresa Foxley and Mr. Michael Flynn from EDC Utah. Teresa's the President and CEO, and Michael is the Chief Operating Officer. And we have about 18 months ago, we started a process of visioning, building, creating, and really generating some energy and some excitement behind what Weber County will look like and what we are today and where we can be in the future. And I'm excited to say that after a lot of work building a team around us to help this data-driven process, that we've now landed to a strategic plan that we presented last week to the media and to the public. It is online on Weber County's website, and we do have some hard copies as well. So I believe you have
Excuse me. Do you mean this?
I do mean that.
Oh.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. A lot of work went into that between some of our consultants, EDC Utah, business surveys. So thank you for bringing that, Commissioner. So I'm super excited to have Teresa here today to talk a little bit about the next steps and the timeline between what's happened so far and what we can expect to go on in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Foxley? So glad you're here.
Well, I am so happy to be here. Thank you so much, Commissioner Harvey, and thank you for the terrific introduction, Holland. It's been a pleasure for our team to have worked alongside with you, the commissioners, with Holland, with the team at PGG Strategies, and others as the strategic plan has been developed over the last several months. So thank you now for giving us the opportunity to talk about what some of the next phases might look like. As Holland mentioned, I'm Teresa Foxley, the President and CEO of the EDC Utah. I'm joined by my colleague today, Mike Flynn, and we are really thrilled to talk a little bit again about what the next phase of economic development in Weber County might look like. So, a little bit of background on us for those who are not familiar with our organization with EDC Utah. We're a 30-year-old private nonprofit that was founded with one singular mission, and that was to bring quality jobs and capital investment into the state. If you'll think back to 1987, when we were founded, the state's economy was very reliant on the extractive-based industries and on construction. And a number of prescient business leaders realized that in order to really sustain economic prosperity in the state, we needed to diversify our economy. And we knew that we had a great and valuable business proposition to companies that might consider growing and expanding in the state. And so this initiative of the Committee of 100 was created, which later evolved into EDC Utah. We partner with the private sector, with the state of Utah through the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and with local municipalities throughout the state to execute on our mission. And obviously, a number of factors have led to the state having an incredibly dynamic economy, but we now do have the most diverse economy in the country, as measured by the Hatchman Index, and EDC Utah was proud to play a role in that.
Awesome.
And I'm proud to be a part of the team and to be able to think about what not only the next phase of EDC Utah looks like, but how we can support our partners better throughout the state. So I thought I'd give just a quick overview of how we got to today. As Holland gave a really terrific overview of the strategic planning process that she and others went through, and we were approached in December about this idea that had sort of generated from the strategic planning process, which was the data demonstrated that there were a number of things that tied the northern Utah economy together that was really agnostic to political boundaries. And some of those things included, of course, Hill Air Force Base as a shared asset. It indicated that a number of Weber County residents commuted into Davis County. A number of Davis County residents commuted into to Weber County every day. And so this concept of could we think about, or should we be thinking more regionally, was presented to us back in December, and we said, you know, that's a terrific idea, and kudos to both commissions for thinking along those lines, and really kudos to them for paying homage to the legacy of CANU, which was really formed as to again recognize that sort of regional economy that does already exist here in northern Utah, and kudos for thinking about how we can enhance some of those existing efforts that are already in place. Following that initial meeting in December, we went on to have another meeting, or we went on to think about what would a regional approach to economic development look like. And so we put a pen to paper and released a white paper on what we called at the time EDC&U, a placeholder name, but something that would allow an organization to really leverage the existing assets and the existing infrastructure of an organization like EDC Utah, where we proactively reach out to site selectors, to companies, where we do serious primary research through business surveys, and where we already have an existing program of work. In February, some northern Utah legislators wanted to know what was going on in northern Utah with economic development, so we were very pleased to have been part of a meeting with several northern Utah legislators to talk about this idea of a regional plan. That then, following the legislative session, got back together to again provide some progress and some updates on what we were doing. And finally, things culminated last week in the unveiling of the strategic plan. So this has not been I just share this history so that all of our stakeholders in the room can understand how thoughtful the Weber County Commission has been about going through this process, and how much stakeholder involvement there has been through to date. So happy to be here today to kind of put the icing on the cake. A couple of things to think about with respect to a regional economic development initiative. I think you've got a great T-chart up here, and this is something that Mike and I, as we're going through decision making, we always try and do this pro and con. We want to be really realistic about what we're facing, but there's a lot of pros to coming up with a regional approach to economic development. Obviously, the sort of first three bullet points here, a compelling pitch, a look for all projects, and a diversity of real estate, all of those kind of fold into the same bucket, which is that a regional approach to economic development allows for there to be more diversity in the way that you package up your market and the way that you promote that to the business community. And so certain parts of Weber County may be more compelling for a type of project. Certain parts of Davis County might be compelling for another. But when you think about things regionally and you're marketing the entire region, you allow the organization to really generate interest from all different types of businesses that may be interested in moving to, expanding, or growing in your region. I think we need to be really honest about the fact that a shared resource creates some efficiency. And that is to say, if you're outsourcing parts of your economic development to a regional approach and you're combining forces, there are just some things that become more efficient from an operational standpoint, and that's HR, finance, legal, marketing, and some of the other sort of back of house things that if each individual entity is running on their own can be run a little bit more efficiently if that's a shared resource. We know in economic development that there's a lot of desk work that's done. And by desk work, I mean that's site selectors, or that's individuals who work on behalf of companies to determine where their next corporate expansion move might be. And they look really at a spreadsheet. They spend a lot of time doing desk work, and we know that if communities are of a certain size, oftentimes they just don't rise to the level of getting the attention of a corporation or a site selector. So increasing your market size by joining with a regional approach can really help advance you to get to the next stage of the desk work, which is, of course, hopefully a phone call from one of those companies. And then finally, I think, again, recognizing that companies don't tend to see borders, they tend to see markets. Similarly, infrastructure doesn't stop along county lines or along city lines. And so if you have the opportunity to partner, you can think about ways to maximize infrastructure that is shared and enhanced and networked above and beyond what it might look like if it were just thought of in a smaller market setting. So, of course, want to talk about some of the cons because we've got to also be really honest about about some things that could trip up a regional approach. I think first and foremost, there's always the potential for political infighting. There, in some instances, and again, because a win might not be in your county or a win might be cross-border, the feeling that it could create what I would call jealous partners. And I think we've got to be really honest about the fact that could absolutely happen, and that we would want to put some ground rules in place in order to mitigate some potential political infighting. I think shifting to a regional marketing approach can be challenging, simply for the fact that you've got to think about a new vocabulary. Many of the economic development organizations that we work with have been really, really good about integrating into their community and bragging about and understanding their specific community's assets. Well, you've got to learn a whole new vocabulary if you're going to start thinking about a regional approach, and that includes really cheerleading and championing your neighbors in different borders. So I think that is something that, again, we can certainly put some ground rules around to get people comfortable, but it does require learning a whole new approach and set of words that you use when you're thinking about economic development and when you're interfacing with these key stakeholders. And then I think establishing a process is going to take a little bit of time. You're dealing multi-jurisdictional. We've got to think about interlocal agreements. We've got to think about open meetings. We've got to think about how the whole organization is structured. And we want to be really thoughtful about it, because in the same way that EDC Utah has existed for 30 years, you'd love to see a regional organization like this really outlive political cycles and outlive any one of us who probably won't be here 30 years from now doing the same thing, but hopefully that organization lives on. So again, wanted to reference back how a regional approach to economic development fits into the strategic plan that was just released last week. So some of the goals that were outlined in the plan were to build prosperity through higher incomes. One of the best ways to build prosperity through higher incomes or to boost incomes is, we know, to tighten your labor market. And one of the things that EDC Utah is very good at is creating that demand side for labor. And that is by winning more deals and playing better defense. So I think, again, an organization like EDC Utah can help you with that goal that was set forth in the strategic plan. Attracting and supporting high quality job creation. I think, again, sending the right message through EDC Utah, through our marketing channels, helps you as an organization to be able to enact and execute on that goal that was set forth. Rising to Weber County's potential. There is so much potential in Weber County. Obviously, the best natural resource that you have here is your people, but you also have land, you have water, you have a university, you have an entrepreneurial spirit.
A great university.
A fantastic
Incredible.
university. Not quite as good as the one immediately to the north.
Wrong.
But a fantastic university nevertheless. So those are obvious sort of points of Weber County, but I would just say there are a number of other assets within this community that we know about. There's a number that I'm sure we don't know about, but establishing a closer connection between our two organizations will allow us to uncover those things, to market them, and to really connect the dots, both between Weber County but also between some of the other counties here. And then finally, ensuring a dynamic economy. I've mentioned a little bit about our organization's history. That is really why we were formed. We were formed to help promote the state and to really drive innovation, to drive recruitment, and to ensure that the state's economy was not only dynamic, but that it was diverse as well. And I think the same can be replicated on a regional scale as opposed to a statewide scale. Some of the goals and objectives that we would suggest you think about in this regional approach would be to develop a regional economic development organization. That's the first goal. You've got to actually just do the nuts and bolts of creating an organization. We know that that there's some opportunity to develop a unique brand and identity. I've heard some of our stakeholders here reference Silicon Slopes and what that has done for the northern Utah County and southern Salt Lake County region. It's not only the branding of the industry there, but it's also the branding of an actual geographic location. I believe there's an opportunity in northern Utah to do something similar, something that, again, respects the military, the industrial heritage that you have here, the entrepreneurial heritage, but also what you want to become and what the future of this place is. I think some other goals that we would recommend you consider are to develop a crystal clear understanding of northern Utah's value proposition and what those competitive assets that you have are. Again, we've listed off a couple today, but there are others that through additional research and data that we can determine are a competitive advantage for you and that set you apart, not against Utah County, but that set you apart from Boise, or that set you apart from Phoenix, or that set you apart from other markets in the country that you are similar to. Obviously develop this regional marketing platform. That's a whole bunch of things. That's web, that's collateral, that's a program, but having an entire platform that allows Weber County to jump off from to drive, again, some of these strategic objectives. Develop a best-in-class process. It is one thing to have a bunch of great collateral. It's one thing to have a lot of great assets, but if you don't have the right processes, it doesn't really matter. And I spend a lot of time with the site selection community. I will tell you that those intangibles of having a really good process can get sniffed out from the moment a plane touches down and somebody's picked up from the airport. They know what a good process is. And so I think that is something that we'd want to really work on, or that we would recommend you work on. And then finally, the overall objective here is to support the development of a regional economy that is diverse, dynamic, and growing. So. These are some original success metrics that we had thought of and that we would recommend, but again, starting a public development toolbox and toolkit and the documents associated with that. Driving traffic to a unique website. We've developed a lot of analytics around our website. We know how people get to our website, we know what pages they visit, and we know how long they spend, and we know from that whether or not we get a phone call. We want to do the same thing in northern Utah, or we suggest that you do the same thing. We really have 4 KPIs that we look at, and those are active projects, RFP responses, jobs and CapEx potential, wins, and economic impact. And we would suggest that you are really, really religious about tracking and reporting on and driving towards those key metrics. Again, retention project metrics, you got to date your spouse. Right? You've got to make sure that you are continuing to focus on your existing business community, because they're the ones that are most likely to grow here if you're treating them right. I think a lot of economic development organizations, stones are thrown at them for only thinking about companies that are outside of their market. Really, the best way to grow your economy is to focus on how to grow the companies that are already here, that already know you, and that already know what your value proposition is, and to listen to them on things that are not going well, and to find solutions for them. Obviously, the completion rate on the number of initiatives that we identify, you want to set a yardstick, and then you want to measure yourself against that yardstick. You do need to do some outbound marketing. You've got to get your brand out there, and we really want to focus also on not only getting your brand out there, but also understanding how your brand is perceived in the market, and we would do that through some Net Promoter Score identification. I wanted to just quickly touch on, we have had a really terrific partnership with Weber County and with the communities that exist within Weber County. Over the last 2.5 years, we've announced several projects in partnership with you that have forecasted the creation of several hundred jobs and about $50 million in capital investment. These are the type of metrics that we suggest you look at. The number of jobs created, the CapEx, and the square footage that's taken down, those are some really, really key metrics. And you'll see here that, again, we're religious about reporting those metrics as our organization. We suggest you do the same. talked a little bit about some of those cons, some of the things that, again, you'd want to put some rules in place to mitigate the cons of a regional approach, and have suggested a couple of ground rules here for, again, your consideration. Always positioning the region as a region. It's not, we can't undermine each other as communities. We have to really talk about and celebrate the fact that as a region, we're bringing more to the table, and hopefully you're getting more from that. Always assume that the client, the company that you're working with, is going to be interested in the entire region. So it's not it's not steering them to one particular geography within the region. It's providing them with a menu of options to choose from. Presenting that data in a regional one market format. I get on some community, again, we do a lot of competitive analysis from other economic development organizations, and I'll get on to multi-region websites, and I'll see, well, click on this link for the incentives in Indiana, for example, or click on this link for the incentives in Ohio for a multi-region there. And I just think we've got to actually standardize what some of those things look like, so that we can position this as an entire region in one market. I think in some instances, leads are going to come in from the cities, they're going to come in from the various counties. We really do want to set a tone that you're going to respect that lead and you're not going to shop that out to other communities. Confidentiality is king in this business. It is amateur hour when folks get information about a client and they trade on that information. It's killed deals before, it kills them fast. And confidentiality is something that we would highly, highly stress, and in fact we would only want to be a part of if that confidentiality is something that we could all agree to. Jointly announce successes. So if you do have a regional partner that comes to join you, you want to have your successes celebrated across the board. So that's whether that's in the media, whether that's in an event, but you really want to bring and get everybody on your bus and make it as inclusive as possible. Obviously, providing timely updates on the operations, the business development and the marketing activities, that's something that, again, we suggest through potentially a council, but a group that really meets regularly that can not only not only this organization would report out to, but that would also help troubleshoot and provide ideas and suggestions. And then be an impartial observer in inter-regional relocations. And by that I mean an example of, let's say you've got a manufacturing company that's outgrown its space in Davis County, and they want to move to Weber County. We would recommend that all of the resources are provided there, but that there is no actively poaching from Weber County to Davis County or vice versa. Again, you want to make sure that whatever company is operating in your market is successful and that they have the room to grow. But you don't want to, in no case, never ever would you want to actively promote that type of activity. So again, these are just some high-level rules of engagement. We would suggest drilling into those and using a council to more clearly articulate additional rules of engagement. This ugly graph here is a potential structure for what a regional organization might look like in partnership with EDC Utah. You'll see here that you have, based on the recommendations, we would suggest that we start some conversations with Davis County, that they join you in a regional approach, given the level of connectedness between Weber and Davis County. And we would suggest creating an organization that, again, a placeholder name would be EDC-NU, and that EDC-NU really ought to be directed by the private sector. I love public sector work, but I believe that economic development works really well when we're leaning heavily on the private sector, because after all, that's what we're trying to attract and that's what we're trying to grow. They're seeing things in live and in real time. And so we would suggest creating a coordinating council that whatever this EDC and you would coordinate very closely with, and that would have a mix of public and private individuals, similar to the EDC Utah board, but that would be led, chaired, and the majority of the seats would be held by the private sector. So that's sort of the stakeholder side of things. On the operational side of things, we recommend hiring, depending on sort of your taste, your budget, either an executive director or a director of the organization that would report into Mike directly. So we would create a position there. and that person would be very well integrated into the EDC Utah operation. So they would have support from our marketing team, from our research team, from our public development team, from our business development team, and of course all of the back of house operations as well. There's probably a lot of ways to skin this cat. This is something that we think, again, that you might consider as you are considering moving down this regional approach. A suggested timeline for your review would be really, you've got so much momentum. The Standard Examiner published a fantastic article about about your strategic plan. We want that momentum to be sustained, and we really want you to see immediate action and immediate results. So we would hope that an organization could be formalized by the beginning of the next fiscal year, which would be July 1. Between now and then, we would want to define the entity, the name, the brand, the mission, the vision, the values of the organization, these engagement rules, create the board, have a calendar formed for the year, and have a program of work that is sketched out. Within the next 90 days, the next 3 months, have this Davis County Business Survey. So that was a big part of coming up with the strategic plan for Weber, was understanding who was operating in your county, why they were there, what they liked about being in your county, and what was missing. We need to do the same thing in Davis County if we're to get them to speed here.
Ours was extremely successful in the outreach. We feel really, really good about all the outreach that was done there, and then the follow-up with Holland and those direct contacts. That was great, and that'll be great for Davis County as well. Just we could learn so much from the businesses, especially saying, hey, we haven't heard directly from the county for quite some time. This is good. And so that exposes, in that statement, it does expose a weakness, but it's also great that we're addressing it head on and taking responsibility for that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And again, congratulations to the organization on running a really terrific process. You had higher than industry standard take rate on the survey, which means you got really good data out of it. And so you can make decisions off of the data that you gathered through the survey work. And so we're happy that you're happy with it, and we'd love to roll it out into Davis County as well. I think it takes about 6 months to do your brand. So you want to have some charrettes with stakeholders. You want to really make sure that whatever this brand is, it really captures the essence of this place. And we have batted about dozens of different names, but it's got to be organic. It's got to be driven by you. It's got to feel authentic. And so we think it's going to take a little bit of time to come up with this brand, and you want to engage some professionals on that as well. You want to message test out against site selectors. You want to really pull people in to make sure that, again, this is a brand that's going to outlast any of us, and it's respectful of the history of this place, which is really phenomenal, but it's also aspirational. And so you want to take some time to develop that. But in that time, you would have the website, the collateral, and the program of work sketched out. And then here's really what would be our absolute, I'm so excited about this opportunity. I've talked a little bit about it in other settings, but there is an opportunity for a coming out party for this organization next March. And we bid on, as an organization, the opportunity to host what's called the Site Selectors Guild Conference. It's the Super Bowl of economic development conferences, where we'll have 45 of the country's top site selectors in our market, captive, not only for their 2-day conference, but for some pre-conference events the weekend prior. This is the coolest goal that we have to work towards, which is to really make that some of those pre-events around the Site Selectors Guild Conference focused on what it is that, again, make this place very, very special. It's an awesome deadline for all of us in this room to say we have got to have our ducks all in a row in time for this conference, because it's a once-in-a-decade opportunity. So I'm thrilled about the conference. There will be some fantastic opportunities for this organization to play a big role in developing it. We have developed some terrific partnerships for the host committee, which include, I'm very proud to say, it's being led through the private sector, with Rocky Mountain Power being a big sponsor of it, but with the governor's office and our organization as well. So, man, I'm a little parched,
No,
Commissioner.
sorry.
I've been talking too much. Interrupt me. Ask some questions.
No, but that, oftentimes, I know the state legislature has recognized the work that's been done up here in the north by giving some seed money to help perpetuate this project and directly with respect to what you've been talking about. They've not done this as a brand new thing. So I've got to think that they find value or they find a good in what we're doing, or they wouldn't just hand out money to help us keep going with this program. We're very, very excited and interested in working with a partner county, and this will be fantastic. And as we continue to move this forward, I don't know of another county or counties doing a regional approach. As we're prepared for this national conference and 45 site selectors all being together in one spot, that kind of generates its own germination within itself, and the byproduct is we'll have a lot of wins, or at least some buzz that we haven't had a privilege in participating in before. So it can really help have a great focus on northern Utah.
Absolutely. I just think it's gonna give you more shots on goal to have a really highly dialed in group that is in front of this group of site selectors. Obviously, don't speak on behalf of the legislature, but they did seem very enthusiastic. They did put some budget towards this, and there's a lot of ideas around how that funding might be utilized to really provide some rocket fuel to this organization right out of the gate. So you want to do it right, you want to be methodical, you want to be careful, but you also want to make sure that you're taking advantage of opportunities as they come by, and certainly the Site Selectors Guild is once in a decade. So
Awesome, thank you, and good congratulations for getting that done.
thank you. So that is the conclusion of my formal presentation. Commissioner Harvey, I was so touched by your thought of the day and Fred Rogers. I had the opportunity to see a Sundance film on Fred Rogers. He was an incredible human being, but I would just sort of conclude by saying we're excited to be your neighbor. And we're excited that you are being so neighborly in your approach to economic development, which is taking this higher level view around wanting to partner with those in your orbit and in your sphere. And today is just a fantastic jumping off point for us, and we're thrilled to be able to provide you with some additional advice and counsel on how you might think about this. So thank you.
Ms. Foxley, appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Please, won't you please be my neighbor? That's awesome. Commissioners, your thoughts?
Well, I'd be happy to start. First of all, I want to say great presentation. Thank you for all the tremendous work. We put a lot of time into visioning and then into collaboration, into research and development. And EDC Utah has been an amazing partner in helping us collect all of the data, and then really researching it and really trying to find out who and what we can become or how we can continue to build in the right direction. I think that they've really proven themselves to be an organization that can help move this, Northern Utah coalition forward, create great goals and objectives. I guess the proof is in the pudding. What are the next steps? Continuing to collect data and analyzing, I think, is extremely important. I know that we have spent a lot of time in our business community creating energy, and everyone that I talk to in the business community thinks this type of coalition moving forward is the way that we can strengthen our community for sure. And so I'm excited to see this move forward. I'm excited to see the timeline that's been rolled out. But again, what are the next steps? I think we have our business community on board, our political community on board, both Weaver Davis, and now I'm kind of looking towards our amazing partners in Davis County. I hope that they can, look at it, see the value in it, and maybe we can see something in the Davis County Commission the next time, short period of time, helping us move this forward, because I'd love to hit those that timeline with all those goals and objectives. So those are some of my thoughts, and I'm appreciative of Teresa. I will say more on a personal note, I wish to congratulate her on really taking EDC Utah in a direction that I don't think it would have went without her leadership. And I think it puts us in a very enviable position. I think this is the most robust economic development plan in the whole entire state, and it's driven not by personal want or need, but by the data that's been collected. So I'm excited to move forward.
Terrific. Commissioner Gibson, any thoughts?
Well, the beauty of going last is you don't have to repeat everything that's already been said, so I'll keep it simple, but just agree with what's been said, and a big thanks to Teresa and EDCU for understanding our region and believing in us and what we have to offer and being willing to come to the table. And as Commissioner Ebert said, I think the opportunities are there, the fruit is ripe, and it just takes all of these different groups and individuals kind of getting together and being unselfish in the way that they look at things, knowing that at the end of the day we will have much more success together. And so I think we're on the right track here, and I appreciate everyone that's been involved with it, from Weber, Davis counties, as well as throughout the business community and the state. So again, Teresa, great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners, both of you. I would echo the same. Michael Flynn, thank you also for your participation, as you can't lead an organization without a fantastic team, and I know that you represent that team there at EDC Utah. Thank you very much. And also Holland and Abby, the two of you here, and Michael, Steve, thank you for your part in getting to where we are. It's all taken a big group to get to where we are, but we know that we're headed in the right direction. This is the right thing to do. So with that, commissioners, I'd entertain a motion, and again, it would be a motion to approve or a motion to move forward of some type.
Chair Harvey, I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution. If I could add really quickly, I think it's important to understand that this, for us, is a complete and different direction. It will take a specific type of organization that has the capacity, the skill, the experience, and I think right now, under Teresa Foxley's leadership, that really this is the only organization that can probably truly accomplish this. And if we're to be successful, we've got to partner with a company that can really deliver, because these are high aspirations. Our goals are very high. So I just wanted to really emphasize that we looked around and we really asked EDC Utah to do a lot prior to getting to this point, and they were able to deliver. So, moving forward, we have to partner with the right folks. So, I'll make that motion that we approve the resolution. I'm not sure what the number is.
It's not a resolution, Commissioner. It's just a motion to approve, and so I'll recognize that motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
I'll second with that understanding. I was not seeing a resolution in the packet either, Mr. Chair, and so if the motion is to move forward in concept, I'm comfortable seconding and voting for that.
That's exactly what I think the purpose today is to move forward in concept. So if you could just affirm that, Commissioner Ebert.
I do. I apologize. I must have an old agenda item because it says request for discussion and action on a resolution.
Yes, and I'm sorry. No, you're correct, but I've changed that. That's the correct way to do that. So we have a motion to approve, or at least in concept, by Commissioner Ebert, a second by Commissioner Gibson. With no more discussion, I'll call. Thank you, Fatima. You're right there. Perfect.
Commissioner Ebert?
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson?
Aye.
Chair Harvey?
Aye. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you for those who came for this presentation. We'll now continue with our other action items, and again, we look forward to Davis County. Jim, again, thanks for your time. The Davis County Commission meets at the same time that we do, so it's rare that we get to partner up, and most of our comrades or our other commissioners, as these two are down in St. George with some of the other elected officials attending a Utah Association of Counties conference. And so Jim and I are staying back to hold up the ship, right? Somebody had to do the work. Yeah, so, yeah. Thank you, Nina, thank you. Very good. All right, we'll move on to G in our agenda. Item 2, which is a request for approval, Ms. Rhonda Kippen, a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Barlow Land and Livestock LLC, a Utah limited liability company, for a subdivision improvement guarantee agreement for the Vaquero Village Cluster subdivision. Ms. Kippen.
Commissioner Harvey, how are you doing today?
Just right, just
Chair
right.
Harvey. And good morning, commissioners on the phone. It's always fun to be able to be away and do this remotely, because you can sit there with your tie on and have sweatpants on, and nobody knows the difference.
I just want you to know I'm in a full suit.
Okay, sure. We believe you. So the item we are addressing today is the final action that needs to take place before we can record the subdivision. It is, as Chair Harvey stated, the consideration and action for a request for final approval of the Vaquero Village Cluster subdivision, including the approval of the subdivision improvement agreement in the amount of $409,885.55. This cluster subdivision is 12.424 acres. It is located at approximately 7100 West, 900 South. The applicants are Dean and Justin Barrow, Barrow, B-A-R-R-O-W. And this has received a unanimous recommendation by the Western Weber Planning Commission. The Western Weber Planning Commission granted a bonus density of 7% for the proposed public access to the development open space, and a 10% bonus density for meeting the purpose and intent of a cluster subdivision. This cluster subdivision is actually split between two separate zones. If you look on page 2 of your staff reports, it shows A1 at the entrance of the subdivision, and then A2 in the rest of the subdivision. Basically, all that is going to be hindering is some of the conditional use permits that cannot be in the A2 zone. Basically, they require a minimum of 2 acres in order to have a conditional use in those zones. And the areas in this cluster subdivision vary from 20,000 square feet to 22,375,000 square feet. And so they are very much aware of that. The cluster subdivision development standards allow for lot sizes to drop down to 15,000 square feet. And so we're not at the smallest lot size, but we're getting pretty close. They had to actually be increased to the size that they're at now due to the septic systems that are on these lots. The proposed cluster subdivision does comply with the Western Central Weber General Plan by providing a cluster type development and preserving a minimum of 30% open space. So that is part of the 2003 general plan, is to provide cluster development. The setbacks in cluster subdivisions have been modified different than the zones in which they lie. And so where we're dealing with smaller lots, we have made it so that the front and rear yards are 20 feet from the front and the rear, and the side yard setback is 8 feet. and these homes can actually be an average height of 40 feet. So basically, it makes it so you can make a smaller footprint and build up. And so basically, again, this is a 12.424 acre piece of property. It consists of 13 lots. They did have 11 lots worth of density. They are preserving 3.739 acres, which is 30% of the common area, which will be dedicated to the public as open space. If you look at if you go to Exhibit C, which is the third to last page in your packet, and then go back 4 more pages from that, that is the landscape plan. And it shows street trees that will line the park strip. It also shows lampposts that will line the park strip. And then it shows a trail system that will go throughout the open space, so people can actually, it'll be a 3-foot soft path and a 3-foot hard path for horses to also walk on. And that is being dedicated to the public, so anybody can, what we're envisioning is possibly a trail going from the park that is adjacent to this, which is across the street. People can then walk that, the park across the street, and then make a connection into Vaquero Village, walk that, and then come back, and it will just be a nice walking area for the residents in that area. The street system within the subdivision is a 66-foot wide right-of-way. I believe the cul-de-sac is smaller at a 50-foot, but the main corridor through there is a 66-foot. Culinary water is being provided by West Warren Water District, and they have been able to provide us with a capacity assessment letter as well as the construct permit. Secondary water, they do have stock certificates within Warren Irrigation Company, and they will be providing secondary water, pressurized water for the development. Since they do have septic systems, they will not be able to flood irrigate in that area. And then sanitary sewer will be serviced by individual septic systems for each lot. And they've been working very carefully with the Weber Morgan Health Department to make sure that those plans will work. Out in western Weber, we really don't see a lot of geologic hazards. So the only hazard that we ever actually really check on out there is the floodplain, and this is actually located in Zone X, so we don't have to require any additional flood studies or anything like that. The 2017 taxes were paid in full, so all that is required to be paid is the 2018 taxes when they are due. The Western Weber Planning Commission recommended final plat approval of Vaquero Village Cluster Subdivision consisting of 13 lots located at 7100 West, 900 South. This recommendation for approval is subject to all review agencies' requirements and based on the following conditions. All ownership needs to match the ownership that is shown on the final Mylar. So there was some corrective deeds that had to go back and forth. That has taken place. And all recorded documentation will need to be recorded with the final Mylar. There will be a deferral agreement that will have to be recorded, CC&Rs, an irrigation easement, a stormwater easement, open space preservation plan, and then the subdivision improvement guarantee. So all of those documents will actually have to be recorded with the Mylar. So we'll need to make sure that we're getting all of those documents recorded at the same time. This recommendation is based on the following findings. The proposed subdivision conforms to the West Central Weber County General Plan. The proposed subdivision will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare. The proposed subdivision will not deteriorate the environment of the general plan or general areas as to negatively impact surrounding properties and uses. With the recommended conditions, the proposed subdivision complies with all applicable county codes, and the proposed cluster subdivision meets the purpose and intent of the cluster subdivision standard, granting 10% bonus density and adequate open space with public access has been made part of the design, granting 7% to approve an overall bonus density of 17% bonus density to the development.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
None for me. Just a couple quick questions on the exhibits that show where the pathway to open spaces are. Who is responsible to maintain those open spaces that they're creating?
The HOA is responsible, and I have been over these open space preservation plans at least 5 to 6 times with our legal division, with new making revisions to ensure that the HOA will be the ones that are taking care of these open spaces. And so we've got that pinned down, and the HOA will be the one responsible for caring for these areas.
The second question I have is something that's come up lately about secondary water requirements. What are we doing on the secondary water requirements? I heard you mention irrigation.
So to the property that's actually located to the north of this subdivision, they are under contract with purchasing this property. I'm not sure if they've actually purchased it yet, but they have got a large pond there, and where they have the irrigation, the stocks that within that irrigation company, they are going to, number one, utilize that pond as storm detention area, and then also as a holding pond for their irrigation water, and they will then be using that to pressurize the irrigation for the 13 lots.
So you kind of lost me at the beginning. That's what their plan is, but they haven't secured that yet?
Based on last I heard, they had actually finally made the last payment on it. But that will be one of the things that is verified prior to recording, is that is, worst case scenario, there has to be an easement, and we've got that prepared in the file. If it's not recorded, there has to be an easement on there granting for the detention basin and irrigation pond. If they do own it, then we won't need to record those 2 documents.
I'm a little concerned that we're moving forward without having that question answered, if that's a requirement. What can you tell me to ease my concern on that?
If you would like to table this item to the end of the meeting, I can run upstairs and look at the ownership records really quickly and let you know whether or not that has transfer title.
Yeah, that would, again, I'll defer to the other commissioners if they want to move it forward, but I would like that. If that's a requirement and it's still up in the air, we're not exactly sure how we're going to address the irrigation or secondary water situation. That would be something that I would feel uncomfortable voting for until that has been through.
Correct. Yeah, and that's what I believe the engineers division had required, that there was just the easement lines coming from that other parcel into, and unfortunately the applicant is not here, and so they can't speak on behalf of that. And so I can run upstairs, check on the vesting, and then I can come back down, and at the end of the meeting, we can reopen this item if you would like, and I can let you know what the ownership currently is under.
Rhonda?
Mm-hmm.
If we approve the item, would it not still be subject to that requirement based upon the way that you described that in your
Yeah, yeah, you know what? Yeah, thank you. I took allergy medicine this morning, so my brain's moving a little slow. You could actually make a condition of approval that prior to recording the Mylar, that the property that the irrigation and storm detention basin will be on will be under Barrow Lands. I believe the name of their corporation is Barrow Land and Livestock LLC. So you could actually add a condition of approval that prior to us recording that Mylar, that they have that parcel under that ownership.
I can go either way. I agree that this needs to be wrapped up.
Mhm.
I don't know if it needs to be before we take action. I guess I'd leave that up to you.
Yeah, because that right there will freeze it, and
The best way for us to proceed, I'm comfortable with.
yeah, because that's actually a really good idea, because basically if I run down here and tell you guys that it's not under their ownership, what are we going to do? Table it till the next agenda item, or we're going to add a condition saying that until it's under their ownership, we can't record the plat.
I think that works for me. We can either table till the end or make the motion now with those conditions. Commissioners, do either of you have a preference?
My preference is to have it figured out before we move forward, but if you'd like to move it forward, you're welcome to do it.
Either way. Carrie, do you want to make a motion with the condition?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we approve the subdivision based upon the presentation that's been given by Ms. Kippen and the condition that the requirements as discussed with property ownership are met to satisfy the secondary water requirement.
I will, do you have a second, Commissioner Ebert? Then I will second that. Call for a roll call vote. Fatima?
Commissioner Ebert?
Ready?
Commissioner Gibson?
Aye.
Chair Harvey?
Aye. Motion carries. Rhonda, thank you. Did you have anything else? Excuse me, Ms. Kippen? Chad?
I was just making sure I was speaking correctly because he's my backup.
And you were, weren't you?
Yep.
I figured you were. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kippen. Your motion, it carries up with that condition.
Carries with
Thank
that
you.
condition.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Scott Story, thank you.
All right.
A request for approval of a lease agreement by and between Weber County and Wheeler Cat for a cat backhoe lease under the state contract for work on Weber County roads and storm drains.
Good morning.
Handsome Mr. Story, nice to see you.
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners.
Yeah.
I'm here representing Joe Hadley, our director. He had a family issue he had to attend to today. So we're here to request for our department for this agreement between the county and Wheeler Cat Company for the lease of a backhoe. I apologize for not having the details here. I'm not sure if it's for a year or for 3 years. You said you guys would have the information. I think it's $10,000, around $10,500 a year for a lease. It's not a lease to purchase. It's just a straight lease for the backhoe. It's going to be replacing a backhoe that we shared with the transfer station. It was over 20 years old, so it'll really be helpful to help us carry out our duties in our department.
I think the money was in your budget from what I understand, and so I don't have any questions on that. Commissioners, any questions? Great, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the contract.
I have a motion from Commissioner Gibson and a second from Commissioner Ebert. A roll call vote, Fatima?
Commissioner Ebert?
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson,
Aye.
Chair Harvey.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. Chad Meyerhofer, this is a request for approval of a resolution of the County Commissioners of Weber County approving a 2018 Municipal Wastewater Planning Program Annual Report. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioners, this is the 2018 Municipal Wastewater Planning Program Annual Report. As part of this program, each year we kind of go through and do a survey that the state's put out to see how our system is. We look at things as far as operational, financial aspects of the system. The idea here is hopefully to catch any issues before they become larger problems down the road. So I've gone through and done it. We're fairly lucky in this aspect because most of our sewer within our systems is fairly new, so not too many big problems right now, but I can answer any questions that you might have.
Are you saying that you have confidence in the infrastructure with our sewer system?
Today, currently, yes.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Meyerhofer?
Is there a resolution?
It needs to be passed by resolution if we can.
I don't see one prepared. Do you have one?
I do not have one.
Then this would be a motion to approve then, wouldn't it, without the resolution?
He says it's by resolution.
I understand that, but wouldn't we need to see that printed? That's what I heard from you just before this meeting, Fatima. I'm just trying to make sure that we're doing it right.
Can we go ahead, Mr. Barron?
We could go ahead with a motion, or if you direct us to pass it by resolution, we can create a resolution after the meeting.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions? Then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the annual report.
Second.
Thank you, and I apologize for not getting that resolution. I'll get it.
Do we need in the motion something a little more, Brian, or is that good enough?
That's sufficient, and we wouldn't need a resolution if they just pass it by motion.
So we have a motion to approve the annual report by Commissioner Gibson and a second by Commissioner Ebert. If there's no other question, I'll call for the roll call vote.
Commissioner Ebert?
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson?
Aye.
Chair Harvey?
Aye. Fatima, just for the record, do you want to assign that a number now or later?
Resolution 16.
Resolution number 16, thank you. On to item, thank you,
Thanks,
Commissioner Meyerhofer. On to item number 5 will be presented by Jennifer Graham. Cassie, I think, is now left for a executive board meeting, and so this is an approval for contracts by and between Weber County and the following for the Annie Get Your Gun production team, or the play that we're having this summer. And we'll go ahead and state those. You can do that if you would, Jen.
Okay, I'll just list them all at once. And yes, Cassie did have to head off to get ready for board meeting. I've got Kaylee Orr, stage manager, Kelly Richardson's choreographer, Derek Myler, music director, Taylor Kmuth, company manager, Cheryl Jamison, properties designer, Liz Smith, director, Mark Rencher, lighting designer, and Joanne Hatch is the costume designer. This is the majority of the contracts for this production. We will be back with just the master carpenter and a couple others as we finish those up.
Really excited for Annie Get Your Gun, which is happening when again?
It's starting off in late July. I don't know the exact dates to be July 26th through August 11th, but we do have some off dates. We do about 4 performances a week, 4 performance nights a week, so it'll be all on the website, Perry's Egyptian Theater website. So.
Awesome, thank you. And this is also in conjunction with Kids Act Up and a couple of other things.
It is, yes.
It's been fantastic. Commissioners, any questions? None being heard, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
And we have a move, recognize Commissioner Ebert as made the motion and Commissioner Ebert as a second. With that, I'll call for the roll call vote again.
Commissioner Ebert?
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson?
Aye.
Chair Harvey?
Aye. Thank you, Ms. Graham.
Thank you.
We'll move then back to item E, like echo on our agenda, which is the presentation of the preliminary 2017 and first quarter 2018 financial report by Mr. Park.
Thank you, Commissioners. I've met with you each individually over this last week, and you also have included in your board packet the preliminary results of the 2017 calendar year. They are not yet audited. We are still going through our audit process, and so once those become, once the audit is final, we'll publish this report on the website and make it available to everyone. But I just wanted to hit a couple of highlights for the 2017 calendar year. Our sales tax revenue grew faster than we had expected. We had budgeted for growth of about 4.5%, and we actually got closer to 7%. So that provided us $340,000 of additional tax revenue. Our registered vehicle fees brought in an additional $466,000, and they're basically back up to the pre-recession levels now. And our charges for services were up $3.2 million, primarily because of additional revenue in the jail for housing federal inmates and also for housing inmates from Salt Lake County. With that, on our expenditure side, we actually saved $1.3 million in payroll savings. These occur when an employee leaves the county employment, and then it takes a few months to fill that position. We have some payroll savings that occur. They're one-time savings, but $1.3 million, which we were able to add back to the fund balance. And also we came under budget with our other operating items by another $1.3 million. In total, we were able to add almost $3.4 million to our fund balance. Of that, we've set aside $2 million to help fund our other post-employment benefit liabilities. And the rest of that, it goes into the general fund balance into our savings account. So at the end of 2017, we have about a little more than $16 million in our rainy day or savings account that's available for use if needed. That puts us around 22% fund balance percentage, which is very healthy and will help ensure that we maintain our AAA bond rating. Moving on to the first quarter of 2018, there's not much here to report other than we are exactly where we expect to be at this time of the year. Most of our revenue comes in towards the latter half of the year, as do most of our expenditures, but we budgeted to spend around 20% of our budget so far this year, and we're at 18.6%, so we're right on track to be where we think we should be. So with that, unless you have any specific questions, I'll leave that as the presentation of the 2017 and 2018 first quarter financial report.
Thank you to our comptroller, Scott Park, for this information. So to make this a little simpler, we earned more than we thought we were going to earn, and we spent less than we thought we were going to spend. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I guess you can only speak to the expenses, but where I went to school, that means it was very well managed. And so I commend you, the team, and all the employees, all the departments for doing a phenomenal job. It's always nice to have a little more revenue and a little less expenses. That's responsible government in my eyes. Commissioners, any comments on that before we go on to the next item on the agenda? None being heard. Thank you, Mr. Park, for that presentation. We'll now move to item H on the agenda, which is a request for a motion to adjourn the public meeting and convene a public hearing. Can I get a motion from one of the commissioners, please?
So moved.
Second.
I got a move by Commissioner Gibson and a second by Commissioner Ebert. Fatima?
Commissioner Ebert?
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson?
Aye.
Chair Harvey?
Aye, we're now in a public hearing. The public hearing regarding the amendments of the operation budget of Weber County for 2018 calendar year. Mr. Park.
All right, so you have before you a summary of the adjustments to the 2018 operating and capital budgets. What we are doing is requesting to roll over $14.3 million from projects that were approved in previous years to this year. How we do this, especially with our transportation projects that are funded with our sales tax, we budget that full amount for the project, even though we know the road's going to take 2 or 3 years to build. And that way the roads don't have to stop in case we've artificially budgeted low. So it sounds like a lot of money, $14 million, but of this, it was already pre-programmed. It's not additional money coming out of the fund balance. It's money that we've saved, and we're just rolling forward to this current year. We also have some new capital projects for $174,000. $49,000 of that is a truck ramp at the transfer station. We also have $44,000 set aside for the Wolf Creek Drive pathway, and then $44,000 for the Weber Memorial Park, but we also have some revenue coming in to offset that. With our 2016 sales tax bond, we had originally intended to pay that off in 2019, but we are in a position now where we can pay it off 1 year early, and so we are asking for permission to spend the $10 million this year instead of next year. That will save us a year's worth of interest expense. And then we also have some miscellaneous equipment purchases, $200,000 for voting machines. Most of that will be offset with a grant from the state. We have $310,000 for fleet vehicle purchases. That is actually using proceeds of the sales of some capital assets, so it's not additional money coming out of the the fund balance that we didn't already have. And then we have various other grants for $17,000 and $10,000 that are fully funded with the grants. Finally, we do want to make one shift. We are moving the building service workers from the sheriff's office to property management. So we're just it's just an organizational change within the county, but it does increase the revenue and expense budget because property management will now bill the sheriff's office for that service. And since they cross departments, our policy has this report as a budget change.
Understand.
So those are the changes, and unless you have any questions, or if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those now.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions for Mr. Park? None being heard, I'll move on to the item number 3 on the agenda, which are public comments. If you'd please limit your comments to 3 minutes for those who are interested in making a comment on what was presented. None being recognized, we'll then move to item 4, which is a request for a motion to adjourn our public hearing and reconvene a public meeting. Do I have a motion on that?
So moved.
Okay. We have a motion. Waiting for a second.
Second.
Second, I have a motion by Commissioner Gibson, a second by Commissioner Ebert. Fatima?
This would be Resolution 17.
This is just a motion to adjourn our public hearing and to reconvene the public meeting. Sorry.
Commissioner Ebert,
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson,
Aye.
Chair Harvey.
I thank you. Thank you, Fatima. And now we'll have action on the public hearing, which is a request to approve of a resolution of the County Commissioners of Weber County amending the 2018 Weber County operating and capital budgets. Commissioners, any discussion on that? And if none, then I'll entertain a motion. No discussion being heard.
I'll make a motion that we approve the budget, change the adjustments.
Resolution 17.
Resolution 17.
I have a motion to approve resolution number 17 about the 2018 Weber County operating and capital budget. Is there a second? No second being recognized. I'll second that motion. I'll call for the vote on that. Fatima?
Commissioner Ebert,
Nay.
Commissioner Gibson,
Aye.
Chair Harvey.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Now it's time for our public comments. Item number I, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. None being recognized, I'll entertain a motion for item number J. I'll make that motion that we adjourn, okay? Doesn't need to be debated. Great. We stand adjourned. Thank you for all of you for attending.